Okay, so when we're looking at trees, there's a couple reasons why we need to know where the new growth is and what's last year's and the previous years. So hopefully you're getting used to the anatomy of a tree now, right? So at the end, we have the terminal buds. These bud scales are mainly going to turn into the shoot for next year and leaf buds. And then you have axillary buds and the leaf scars and the stem. So I'm looking at the top portion of this plant. And so those parts all make up the first year wood. So the newest wood is always on the tips. And then you have the scar where the terminal bud was the previous year. And so you're always going to have sort of that ring effect. And so this is a good way to look at the trees, like how well are they doing? How much are they growing? But this is also really important to know. So you can see we have 3 years of growth on this twig. Certain trees will bloom and fruit on certain year wood. So for example, peaches are going to grow on 1 year wood. So when we prune, we want to keep some 1 year wood. So we get peaches, and we want to encourage new 1 year wood for the following year for the peaches of next year. So when we're pruning fruit trees, we're always thinking about the future. We don't want to prune off all the parts that will fruit for later. So this is really important. So looking for those leaf terminal bud scars is really important to help you determine, how much growth that you have. And I do have later on, we'll talk about determining fertilization based on year of growth too. So another reason to know where that is. So I found a good example of a branch, and you can see there are 4 years of wood showing here. So with apples, the terminal buds, of course, are going to just have leaves. The lateral buds and spurs are going to produce, especially the spurs. And here in this picture, you can see kind of where it says 2 year wood. There's some little stubby growth there with buds on the end. They are the spurs. So they're kind of shortened twigs that have all these flower buds on them. And so these spurs we want to see on apples, and we want to make sure that we have them from 2 to 5 years old. And this again kind of depends on the variety. So Gala apples very easily fruit on up to 5-year-old spurs. I was listening to another fruit tree talk, and somebody said some of these trees will even fruit on 20-year-old spurs. I think some cherries will do that. So knowing the year of wood that you need and the structures that you need is really important. So pears are the same as apples, right? They're both pome fruits. So they're also going to be blooming on that 2 to 5-year-old spur wood with the buds. Peaches are the one that's going to have mainly the 1 year wood that we're looking for. So we want to look for a different colored wood. It's usually a little bit brighter in color, where the older wood gets more brown or chestnut colored as they age. And we want to make sure we're never cutting off all that 1 year wood, but it's okay to reduce it. The apricot is also going to have some spurs, but it also mainly blooms on 1-year-old wood, which makes sense because it's more closely related to the peach than it is the apple. Cherries have laterals and never terminals. As far as their buds, the terminals not going to have flower buds, just the laterals, and they all bloom on spurs and shoots. And so it's a combination. And then the sour cherry is mainly going to have the blooms on shoots and not as many spurs as the sweet cherry. So I was out looking for some spurs on my sour cherry, and mine is mainly growing on those shoots and not from spurs. So this is the type of wood that you want to look for the fruiting. And so it's really important when we get into the pruning. So the fruiting wood on plums have spurs. So they're mainly going to be, their good fruit's going to be from spurs. So a spur is a very short very short twig. It's very, very kind of stout, short twig that's going to have a whole bunch of buds kind of compacted on it. And so where a shoot is going to be longer, slender, look more like a regular branch twig of a tree, where your spur is going to be short and compact. If you guys can see my arrow, I don't know if you can. There are some spurs between the by the 3-year-old wood red line and by the 2-year-old red line, there are spurs. Okay, and here's a close-up of some spurs. So here we have some fruiting wood of cherry, and these are the fruiting spurs. So all those buds at the tip are going to be flower buds. So if you think about cherry trees, you're going to have clusters of flowers. And so this makes sense. This is their spur. And you can see how you have those concentric lines like that bud scar over and over again on these spurs. So these are older wood, but in short little compact units. Training. There's many different training systems out there. You want to pick what's right for you and what's right for your yard. You might not have a lot of room, so you might want to do something different. Somebody mentioned espalier. Espalier is taking a tree and making it basically two-dimensional. So it has stems just going out, branches on two different sides, usually put on a fence or a wall. Might be a way to use a microclimate too, is to espalier a tree up against something that might give off some warmth. So you could use that to your benefit. It takes a lot of training and pruning to get to that structure, so it almost looked more like a grape that was running horizontally. This in the picture here is a V-shaped training system. Some orchards tried this quite a while ago. They like this because they can get more trees together. This is an easy way to prune. Some of this pruning can even be done mechanically. They'll come along the top and just kind of trim them off mechanically and then follow back up with the detailed pruning down low. And obviously, though, not something that's very attractive that you might want in your yard. So look, do some looking. I'm going to talk about a couple different types of pruning systems today, but feel free to, research this too and figure out what types of systems might work for you. The main point of pruning is to capture the sun, right? We want photosynthesis so we get good growth and fruit production. And so this V system, if you can imagine, is getting good sun into the middle of the tree as well as on the edges. And so that's one reason why they chose this system. This is an open vase system. So this is pretty common for peaches in our area. If you think of an umbrella upside down, this is the open vase system. And so this is a big cup that is going to capture the sun, and it's going to let light in there so we get good fruit throughout the tree rather than maybe just on the top or edges of the tree. And so this is why we do some of these pruning methods. So this is an example of pruning a 1-year-old tree. And so it's getting planted. It's just a little whip. They're then going to do and I'll explain some of these in a different slide, the different cuts. But the heading cut is where you take a stem that's going straight up, off, and where you want it to branch out. So basically, we're going to take this little whip and we want to develop 3 to 4 strong scaffold or main branches that are going to support the structure of this tree. And so this is where we're forming this to get into that open vase. So you can see at planting, they did some pruning. The first summer, they're going to do some pruning. So they're taking off the lower branches that aren't needed. They're doing another heading cut to make sure that these side branches are going to be the main things that are going to be dominant, not the terminal. And then they're going to come back in again and do some thinning. And so we continue to get good light into the center of the tree. So this is a central leader pruning, and sometimes this is used for apples and cherries. So you have the first year growth. You can see that they've thinned out a few branches. They're trying to get some nice structural branches in here that have a good angle and that they're a certain amount apart so they're not crowding each other. And then the second year they're doing some thinning, and the third, and same thing as the third year. So they're trying to get good sunlight and aeration, because aeration is important too with keeping disease pressure down. And I do have, hopefully it'll work, I do have some videos I'm going to show you today out of Utah State, and we are creating one for our area too. It's just not, it's still in production. So here's some definitions on some of these different types of cuts. So a renewed cut is when you take some old wood out. So depending on the pruning strategy, you can see in the background here that this orchard is doing a lot of tight upright trees. So there's kind of a movement towards walls of trees and orchards, so more can be done mechanically. So what they do is they come in and take out some of the older wood so they can produce some newer wood. And of course, we always want to be thinking about producing newer wood and fruit trees, because that's where most of the fruit is coming from, is 1 to 2 to 5 year old wood. Thinning cuts is eliminating the undesired growth and opening the tree up. It removes the branch all the way back to where it originated from. And so the renewing cut, we're leaving some dormant buds so a new branch will come out from there. A thinning cut, we're trying to get rid of that so it's not competing with the other branches that we want. And then the heading cut is taking the tips of the branch or the trunk and removing it. And this is used mainly on the young trees to form those lateral branches that are going to be our main structure of the tree. And I'm seeing some activity in the chat. Where do we go here? Yes, you can see my pointer. Good. Are there specific flowers that can be matched with specific fruit flowering times? And does it hurt the tree to lop out the central leader? No, the tree's gonna, we're taking out the central leader very young, so that's gonna heal over. Flowers, I'll get into that a little bit in part 2 this afternoon, but typically we don't want flowers underneath the trees because we do have to spray. You certainly could have them in different parts of the yard. And that kind of gets into a whole pollinator talk, so I'm going to stop right there with the flowers for now. Can we get this PowerPoint? Yes, I will create a publisher document and send that to Katie so we can get that out. Why do they use sticks between limbs sometimes? So on certain pruning systems, they're trying to get the branches to move in a certain area. So at our research station, they're doing some experimentation of different pruning systems for cherries. And since cherries really want to be a terminal tree, and that's not what we don't want them going to the sky. We want to use different systems. So sometimes they'll use them to hold them at certain angles or head them in certain directions. But we can also do that a little bit with pruning too, and where we're selecting or pruning. So that was that question. How soon should homeowners start thinning or pruning after 2-inch B&B planted in a residential landscape? So if it was just pruned this year or planted this year, you could do some thinning of the branches now. It's actually even getting a little bit late because I'm seeing bud color on my plum now. So you could actually prune now. And then of course you want to take it easy your first year, and then we'll get into how much, what percent, but a large percent comes off on some of these trees, especially the peaches. I would also like, okay, so PowerPoints. Yes, we can do that. Okay, so that's renewing, thinning, and heading cuts. So we've covered those. Here's just a sketch, just to kind of show you. So you can see some buds. So they're heading, and you're mainly heading because we're wanting that branching, right? We're getting rid of that terminal bud. We're causing some branching to occur. And so that's why we're heading. And here you can see one of the buds is starting to break after they pruned. And then thinning again is coming in and actually taking that whole branch out. So we're getting more light spaced in between the branches. So just kind of a good little sketch there. So pruning objectives, talked a little bit about this, but of course we want the sun for good leaf growth and good fruit production. We want to have uniform distribution of the fruiting wood. We want to manage the years of growth for continual fruiting. So I mentioned this, that's why we're paying attention to what year wood we're cutting off. We're going to control the size and the health of the tree. And of course, we always want to remove any dead, dying, or diseased wood. What our growers do is we have, and I'll get into diseases this afternoon too, but they go through and they take the diseased wood out first, and then they come back and they do kind of more of a clean wood. That way they can destroy the diseased wood, and then oftentimes they might actually mulch the clean wood and use that to put back into the orchard. And so that's one way of handling some of the diseased wood. By doing this pruning too, you're also going to reduce limb breakage. I'll get into thinning and we'll talk about limb breakage too. And then you're going to increase that aeration for disease control. And then of course we want quality fruit. So pruning is actually a way of thinning some of the fruit because you are removing some flower buds as well as leaf buds. So this is helping you with the thinning process too, which we'll get to. So pruning tools, it's really essential to have good pruning tools if you have trees like this. The top two are the main ones, the bypass pruners and a good pair of tree loppers. Our Palisade Co-op sells these blue ones that all the fruit tree guys use. I guess they're a little more stout. I don't know the difference between these loppers and any other loppers, but they seem to be pretty good loppers. So I believe in investing in good tools because the top ones, the Felcos there, I have had Felcos for over 30 years. You can get blade replacements. My husband's great at sharpening them for me. And then I can clean them easily too. So Lysol works for the homeowner. You can just spray the Lysol on. So especially if you knew you took out some diseased wood, you want to spray your pruners before you go and prune something else. You're not spreading it. And then you want to let it dry. That drying process is what actually breaks open the cells of the fungus or the mildew or whatever we're trying to prevent. So 10% alcohol works. 10% bleach works as well, but it does tend to rust your tools, so you might want to avoid that. A handsaw, of course, is really good if you're going to take larger limbs out. I know on our apple trees, my husband's not been really good about opening the center as well, and we do have a few large limbs that probably need to come out at this point. But he and I both do the pruning, and we kind of share in the fruit tree duties because, like I said, it's lots of work. And he actually used to manage Temple University's orchard in Ambler, Pennsylvania. So we both have a history of having orchards in our lives. So, and any diseased wood, if you can, you want to burn it, bury it, or take it to the city dump. But you basically want to get rid of it. A lot of those diseases do not compost out, and they are still active on the wood after you remove it. So it's really important to get rid of that diseased wood. So here's just some fun pictures of pruning yesteryear. You can see these guys are on stilts. I don't think I could manage to do that, but I'm sure they got used to it. And of course, you can see the ladder. Pruning, of course, we want to keep these trees as short as possible. So we're not on the ladder, not going to the top rung of the ladder. So it's called keeping the trees pedestrian. So it'd be nice to just walk up and reach up and pick an apple or pick a peach and not have to get on the ladder to do this. So this is one of the main reasons we prune as well. On the one from today, you can see sort of a scalloped pruning. So they prune, they kind of do these heading cuts. So you kind of get these, and I'll use my pointer here if I can, So you kind of see, you know, this branch was going up here, it would have kept going straight, but they did a heading cut. And so then you got another scallop. And so you can kind of see how these kind of scallop their way up as they're going out. And so they're not just going straight up. This is Emily. She's one of our main pruners at the Orchard Mesa Research Station, now called the Western Campus, because they built a new building for us there, which is wonderful. We can actually hold some classes there, hopefully soon, once we get through the COVID issue here. But you can see this is actually the same tree, just from a different angle. And so Emily came through, and you can see in the background too, some of these peaches are already pruned. She always saves ones for class for us. But you can see how much wood is in this tree and how much she took off. So with peach trees, they can remove up to 60% of the trees. Now, if you haven't pruned your tree in a long time, you don't want to do that. You want to follow the 20% rule that we use for ornamental trees, because it's going to shock your tree. So these trees are used to this. This happens every year. They come in, and what she's doing is she's generating new wood, because you know you want that new wood, and she's leaving a certain amount on here. So all these little tips, these finer, younger branches on this are going to give her fruit. If you notice, she left a few down here, so we get some sun protection of the main scaffolds, because we can get some sun scald, and we'll talk more about that this afternoon. But just when you're pruning, you're thinking, right? And so if you're not used to doing this, it could take you some time to prune a tree, because you're going to be thinking it through, where Emily does hundreds of these every year. So she's really fast. I think can whip through, you know, a peach tree in 8 or 10 minutes or something ridiculous. So, but you can see some of her cuts here. She took out some of those ones that were just going straight up. We don't want them to go straight up. We want them to go out to capture the sun. The ones going straight up are gonna block the sun. And of course she's doing those thinning cuts and everything else. So again, this is that open vase. Think about that upside down umbrella. It is giving you that shape that's gonna capture the sun. So here I had just an example again of that scaffold cut. You see kind of that arc coming in, taking out these sprouts that are going straight up. But this is also called a bench cut. So you have something going up where I'm going to prune to a bud that's going out. So you're taking away that up movement, pruning outward. Again, we're capturing that sun, going to make it a pedestrian tree so we don't have to get on a big 10-foot ladder, and getting rid of all that vertical movement and making it more outward. With any pruning system, you want to keep a few small inward branches, as mentioned in the last slide, just so we're protecting from that sun, because since our UV is so high here.
And I'm JD Gunnell from Utah State University Botanical Center. We're going to show you how to get to this point, a pruned peach tree.
Peaches are trained to an open vase center with 3 to 4 main branches. These branches typically start around the height of your knee and go to about your waist.
And normally we want those branches to have a little bit of space between them vertically so that they're not right apart from each other. The second step is to know where the fruit is found. And the fruit is found on year-old wood. And that year-old wood is normally a different color. It's kind of an orangey red color. It's what makes the peaches look really cool, in my opinion. The other thing to look for is this bud arrangement where you'll have 3 buds, normally 2 fat buds on the outside and 1 thin one on the inside. The 2 fat buds are where your peaches are going to be. The thin bud, that's where your next year's growth is going to be, your vegetative growth.
The third step is in correlation with that. Knowing that peaches grow on 1-year-old wood, you're going to be pruning about 50% of the tree away, trying to stimulate growth for that next year.
And also making sure that the wood that you leave can hold up the peaches that you want for this year.
This could be one of those fast forward moments.
I like my life lately. Yeah.
As you can see, step one, we've opened up this tree into an open vase training system.
Step two, we've left plenty of year-old wood. That's where the fruit is found. Know where the fruit is found.
And step three, we've removed about 50% of this tree, allowing the sun to penetrate the interior of the canopy.
We're here in a mature orchard, and here you can see the open vase system on this mature peach. You can see that it's open, the light will come in, and by following the 3 easy steps that we gave you, your tree can also look like this when it's in full production.
For more information, please check out our website at extension.usu.edu.
Okay, and then I wanted to show you guys from the same guys, but on apples. So you can see a difference. They have one that is a, you hearing that, Katie? Yes.
I'm Jerry Goodspeed.
And I'm JD Gunnell.
We're here at the Utah State University Botanical Center in Kaysville, Utah.
We're going to show you today how to prune an apple tree to a modified central leader system in 3 easy steps. The first step is understanding what a modified central leader system is. Now typically, a modified central leader, you'll have 3 to 4 main branches starting about at your knee, ending about at your waist. You want them separated vertically so they don't come out in one spot of the trunk. You'll leave an open space of about 2 feet, and then you'll repeat that system up a little bit higher. The modified part comes in play when once you have your main branches set, you'll come in and you'll remove the central leader.
The second step is to know where the fruit is found. And on an apple tree, the fruit is found on spurs. They're little puny stems, and they're always found on older wood. So they'll be inside of the tree on 2, 3, 4-year-old wood and older. And a spur can live up to, oh, they say up to 20 years if you take care of it.
The third step being let the light in. Allowing those spurs to receive as much light as possible creates better fruit. And so you'll come in and you'll remove any branches that are providing shade into the interior of the tree. So we've gone through our steps. First step, we've created a modified central leader system. We've got a set of branches down low, open area in the middle, and then a second set.
Rule 2, we've left plenty of spur wood. And rule 3, it can get plenty of light.
So here we have more of a mature apple tree. You can see the modified central leader where they've controlled the size of the tree by taking out that center leader.
You can also see the wonderful spurs that we've got throughout the tree, and they're wonderful because the light is reaching them all, so they've let the light in really well into this tree.
Follow these 3 easy steps to maximize your fruit production in your apples.
For this and more information, go to our website at extension.usu.edu.
So here's what I was just talking about, and you can see the top branch of the peach has not been thinned, and then you can see the bottom branch, and they've come in and they've thinned these out about 6 to 8 inches. And so that is what a peach stem would look like before or after. I normally take a big trash can or bucket out there when I'm thinning, and you always feel guilty throwing it away, but you know in the long run you're doing it for the good of the fruit and for you later because your fruit's going to taste better. So thinning with peaches is about every 6 to 8 inches. So I use my pinky and thumb as which my stretched pinky and thumb are about 8 inches, and so I pretty much grab everything in between with my other fingers, and that's how I thin. The orchard sometimes will use some mechanical kind of whip looking things that'll come in and knock the fruit off, and they'll have like spacers in them, and they can do it that way, or they'll also hand. We have a lot of people that still hand thin, and that's why it's so labor intensive. And so it is something, it takes quite some time if it's a good fruit set year. But it's something that's really important because we want, we want that good fruit. So with apples, and this is the picture on the left here of the apples, you can see them numbered. So they bloom in clusters of flowers, right? Think of that spur as putting out all these fruit if everything's gone right with the frost. And so we want to thin down to the best apple out of that clump. So ideally, you're going down to 1 apple per cluster, and that's going to give you one big juicy apple versus a bunch of little ones that aren't as juicy. So when they're about nickel to quarter size is the range of sizes that you want to thin the fruit. If you wait beyond that, you are too late. The fruit, the tree will think the fruit is still there, and it's not going to switch into thinking like, okay, let's put all my energy and good juices into this one fruit. I'm still producing 5 fruit right here and not 1. So you have to do it early. If you miss it, it's not really going to make a difference. So that's the way thinning works, and it is laborious, but it is worthwhile. It is good to do.